evening, everyone. This is Tara Reade. I'm your host. This is the Politics of Survival. And I have someone I greatly admire, and I feel very fortunate that he took time out of a very intense period of geopolitics that we're experiencing right now. I called it the politics of diplomacy for a reason. I brought in the UN ambassador of Russia, Dmitry Polyanskiy. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dmitry, and accepting this invitation. Truly honored. Truly honored. Thank you. One of the things when you sent me your bio, and for the audience to listen, go ahead and look on the links below. You'll see Dmitry's Twitter handle and also a little bit more about him. But one of the things I was impressed with, which I know is part of the work that you do, you speak probably like 6 languages. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that I speak them equally good. My English is more active right now, but it depends on the country where you work. So I started as Orientalist in Tunisia, so I spoke Arabic and French. At this moment now, I would say that I understand Arabic, but I wouldn't dare to speak it fluently with somebody. But I will need some time to pick it up again. So some languages are kind of conserved, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I know that in your bio, it also said that you've been doing your present position, which is the first deputy UN ambassador since 2018. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that was sort of, you know, and I know that, I don't know if you know any of my writing, but I was talking about Russophobia back in 2018 and my fear about what the US was trying to push and NATO back then. And you came in at a very intense time. Can you talk a little bit about like what the arc of your work has been like, what it's like to work in this environment in this particular point of history?
Well, I can tell you that I have an impression that I had 3 different postings. So one posting was starting from 2018, and we had quite good cooperation on many issues. Of course, there was always a difference of opinion, which we are not afraid of. Then we came to COVID. COVID was a very special time. Everybody was on Zoom, everybody was digital, and we lacked very much human diplomacy, because diplomacy is not done through the internet. You need to have contact for many reasons, and I don't think it was a very good experience to have this. And the third posting started this February, of course, with the beginning of our special military operation. I would say that the initial period was extremely difficult and challenging because, well, we all understood that we were heading towards some kind of a difficult time, that Western countries do not want to listen to our arguments, that problems are persisting in Ukraine, that Western countries and especially United States are covering up the Ukrainian regime, the crimes and wrongdoings. So we were feeling that something is coming, but nobody, of course, had this understanding of when exactly this will happen. And when it happened, of course, the initial reaction of United States and Western countries was quite harsh in terms of Russophobia. What we saw was the desire to kind of cancel everything Russian. And this is very disappointing because we always felt that Russia was misunderstood. We always felt that Russian politics, Russian positions were misrepresented for especially American and the European public. But we never imagined that there were so many kind of emotions like hatred and Russophobia, things that you can't easily explain, even if you do not concur with somebody in terms of his political views and his positions, because this is something different. When people are speaking about canceling Russian culture, I can't imagine what kind of hatred you must feel inside to promote such things. What is Tchaikovsky guilty of in terms of Russian special military operation? What is Russian language guilty of? And what about millions of my compatriots who happened to live in the United States and elsewhere, the things that they were facing, this kind of discrimination, closing of banking accounts, I don't know, forceful requirements to condemn politics of Putin in order to be eligible to do something or not to do something. What about sports? How come the Russian sportsmen are to blame, and what is the reason behind asking them again to condemn Russia's actions to be able to participate in certain events? This is really disgusting, frankly. And this period was very intense at the beginning. I can't say it's over right now, but I feel that a lot of people now understand a little bit better the situation, and they see that we need to find a kind of solution to the problems that we face. And solution always includes dialogue, of course. And if you want to cancel everything Russian, of course, you will not be able to find a solution with Russia. And the solution must be with Russia. I think everybody understands this.
You know, and it's just to go further with that, what I noticed, because my audience knows me as a political content creator and commentary, you know, I make commentary about politics. They know I've been talking about this for a while. And one of the things that was shocking, because I used to do op-eds for RT has been censored and of course banned in Europe. And RT was a lovely place. I mean, I was so lucky to have my writing be considered, you know, good enough to be published by them. And I've always, you know, I have, you know, a great feeling about RT. And so many people were really disheartened that they didn't have that other lens, because it's now they're trying to siphon the information, but they're even, of course, censoring Western journalists that are speaking out against this, what we call proxy war that the US and NATO is fighting against Russia via Ukraine, using Ukrainians as cannon fodder. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to speak to or ask you about was the perception that many Americans thought it started in February that are not really paying attention, right? They thought the military operation, the special operation, that was the beginning in February 2022. But actually, this went back to 2014 when there was a US-backed coup that was exposed by Julian Assange, and other, you know, legacy papers reported on it. It happened in 2014. Victoria Nuland was involved with that. And 6 to 7% of that government were Nazis, except and go further, they're armed. And then all of the things that were happening in Donbass and the horrible murders that killed more than 14,000 Russians. It's really disheartening to not be able to hear that portion of the reality of how we got to this point in history. Are you finding that people are more open to discussing this and discussing the reality that there are Nazis in Ukraine that are killing civilians?
Well, most of the people with whom I'm dealing, most of our Western colleagues and diplomats, they prefer to be comfortably numb, as Pink Floyd was singing. Okay. So for them, it's comfortable to consider, to believe that the history started from February 2022 and nothing before that ever happened. So they say that it was Putin's war of choice, that it was Russian aggression, and it was just, you know, out of the blue. Russia decided to fight freedom-loving, open society like Ukraine, where everybody was enjoying Western type of human rights, where people were living in harmony. And then those bloody Russians are suddenly attacking, even not giving any reasons why did we attack, just because we were jealous maybe about what they achieved. That's Western perception. And unfortunately, it is being translated very widely. And it's common misperception of what has happened. Of course, you're absolutely right. In order to understand what was happening, you need to go back in history, which of course doesn't start in February. It's even doesn't start in 2014. It starts with the independence of Ukraine, which at the beginning was very friendly, very open towards Russia country. And it's hard to imagine, it was hard to imagine, I remember this time, that we would have ever any problems with Ukrainians. But what happened at that time, of course, the West was in light of the most notorious theories of Brzezinski and the others, understanding that one needs to fragment Russian influence, to weaken Russia and to have it not as an adversary, but as a very weakened state, feeble and not capable of pursuing its own interests, and maybe then to share our natural resources and so on and so forth. This politics was very successful at the beginning of the 90s, but with the appointment of President Putin, I think this all stopped, and that's then when we started to have problems with the West, when we decided to really to defend our national interests. But back at the beginning of independence, Ukrainian leadership was again very open and friendly towards Russia. But then step by step, people who were in immigration in Ukraine, and many of them were descendants from those who collaborated with the Nazis, they started to come and to infiltrate the society, to create NGOs, to kind of brainwash population, playing on nationalist feelings. And with nationalism came this neo-Nazism, because currently in Ukraine, when people are saying, why are you always playing this neo-Nazism cards? There can't be neo-Nazis in Ukraine because their president is a Jew. I'm saying that it doesn't change anything. What is important is that, for example, the leaders of the neo-Nazis, Stefan Bandera and Roman Shukhevich, who are implied in a lot of crimes against humanity during the Second World War, are national leaders of Ukraine. For me, that's an indicator, and not who is the president of this country.
Right.
He's maybe he's a Jew, but he's also a Russian speaker. But it didn't prevent him from introducing very draconic discriminatory laws against Russian language and Russian speakers during his staying in power, despite the fact that he was elected by the residents of Ukraine, by the citizens, because of his pro-Russian program and because of his promises to deal equally with those who speak Russian and Ukrainian, and to live in peace and to seek peace with Russia. He did exactly the opposite right now. So when people tell me that Zelensky is an elected president, I say, yes, he is elected. He was elected, but he was elected for the program which he didn't implement. And he's doing exactly the opposite thing what people were voting for. So coming back to this problem between Russia and Ukraine and its origins, I might say that, to cut a long story short, that step by step, what we had in reality, we were facing kind of a hornet's nest on our borders, which was very much threatening us. And everybody understood that at some point of time, sooner or later, we will have to deal with this problem, because these people were not absolutely going to implement Minsk agreements, which were internationally acknowledged framework for settlement of this inter-Ukrainian crisis. And this was the only possibility for Ukraine to keep these Russian speakers and Russian-speaking regions within the country, providing them with certain guarantees to speak their own language and to worship the heroes that they want to worship. This is normal. I can't say that, well, people are wondering why, for example, in Belgium, there are 2 official languages. And can one imagine that, for example, one part of Belgium would dominate the other and forbid it from speaking its own language? What would be the reaction in France if the Wallonian population is not able to speak French?
Right.
What would be reaction in Germany if in Switzerland German is banned and French is dominating? Right. I don't think they will be happy, but it's just to give you an example of what kind of feelings we would have. Of course, it's not a reason for starting military campaign, but the reason for starting military campaign is when your compatriots living there, children, women, elderly, are being shelled daily, when there are victims, and nobody is paying any attention to this. Everybody is blaming Russia for this, which is ridiculous. And we understood that for the sake of these people, for the sake of their future, we need to take action if Minsk agreements are not working. And it turned out that we are absolutely right, because already in the course of military operation, we recovered very convincing documents, military documents from planning, which were indicating that Ukraine was about to start assault on Donbass in a couple of weeks, actually at the beginning of March. And if you also remember, if you're recalling, people are now saying that, well, Russia all of a sudden started its military operation, but you need to come back to this time, and you need to recall a very serious intensification of military activity by Ukraine in Donbass, intensification of shellings, when hundreds of thousands of refugees flooded Russia. So this preceded the days when the military operation was started. So we can't say that it happened out of the blue. It's really, there were a lot of serious factors that we had to consider. And of course, we have to get rid of this hornet's nest, because this is very dangerous for our country. It's, by the way, dangerous for the whole of Europe. Europe doesn't understand it at this stage, because it's blinded by Russophobia and political calculations. But it's, in reality, it's even more dangerous for Europe than it is for Russia, because this is really a very, very dangerous regime, promoting very dangerous values. And Europeans are just very, very blind. Even the Poles are very blind right now, which really astounds me, because I worked in Poland for 3 years. 3 years. I liked this posting very much, and I know what the Poles think about Stefan Bandera. His forces massacred 300,000 Poles during the Second World War. Wow. And if you ask a rank and file Polish citizen, what does he think about Banderites, he would of course swear, and he would tell you what really it happened during the Second World War, because it's in the memory of the generation. But the politicians, for political reasons, they prefer to kind of sugarcoat it and to say that, well, you know, it's good for Poland because it's bad for Russia. Everything that is bad for Russia is good for Poland. I can't understand why people are so blind at this time. And not only the Poles, the others as well. Second World War was not very much very far away time, and I personally I can't be indifferent when I see swastika painted somewhere. I understand that this has a relation to something very bad, and we need to stop this. But swastikas are everywhere in Ukraine. You have them insignia, even on the supreme commander of Ukraine, Mr. Zaluzhny. As it turned out, he's wearing swastika, and nobody is saying, well, this is bad. I can't imagine how this happened. We were all fighting Nazism during the Second World War, Americans, Britons, Russians, and now they say, well, it's nothing serious. You just need to leave Ukraine alone. I can't imagine how we came to this.